Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 20th recording of the Council on Aging program, monthly program. I'm Kerry Kissinger, your friendly volunteer host. And with us today, we have Mara Briere, who I will introduce more fully later, but she's president and founder of the organization that she's going to be talking about. Angela Smith is with us, as always. And David Klein is stuck in traffic, as always, so he'll be here shortly. And Nancy Jassain, the president of the Friends of the Council on Aging, is with us as well. So we have a great program outlined for you with information I think you will find to be very interesting and helpful. And you mentioned the Alzheimer's, the Walk for Alzheimer's, and then mental diseases are affecting more and more families, family members, and individuals as we age and as we live more stressful and complicated lives also. And Mara was telling me that over the course of a person's lifetime, 1 in 4 people will be affected in one way or another by a diagnosis of some mental illness or mental situation. And so it's something that mental illness or mental diseases or mental diagnoses are something that we will all be affected by sooner or later, or know of a family member or friends that are affected by it. And Mara founded an organization called Grow a Strong Family Inc. She's located in Bedford. And she is a certified family life planner. Now, I don't know what a certified family life planner is, but maybe Mara can explain that and also tell us a little bit more about her organization, the Grow a Strong Family Inc. Organization. So, Mara, tell me, just what is a certified family life educator and how did you get to be one?
A certified family life educator is a professional who has a broad and comprehensive body of knowledge to work with families across the spectrum, meaning from infancy through elder years, on a variety of issues related to life development, life planning, lifespan, including interpersonal relationships, marriage, communication, financial planning, health, well-being, nutrition, ethics, public policy. And what we do is focus on education and prevention. So we're not social workers, we're not therapists, we're primarily educators, coaches. We look at family strengths and we look at areas of problem and say, okay, let's look at your strengths, let's build on those strengths, let's shore up what's not working well so that it can become another strength for the family. So we're very involved and invested in promoting resilience across the lifespan. Grow a Strong Family, Inc. was developed 3 years ago as a charitable nonprofit organization to provide services, family life education services to family members who are uprooted by mental illness, meaning that somebody in the family has either a mental illness or another brain disorder like Alzheimer's, and the family members need additional support, training, information, education, strategies, tools, resources, because in general, family members are not given that information, and they need it when they have a loved one that they're taking care of.
Well, as you were speaking about the role that you have, when you said the word coaching, it sort of triggered the distinction in my mind, at least, between therapy, which is pretty much a one-on-one thing, and coaching, which is a one-on-many or many-on-one thing, and really expands the level of support that a family can provide to someone in need, in addition to helping themselves. So that seems to be the focus of your organization, not therapy so much directly one-on-one, but broadening the whole level of support to the entire family.
The Grow a Strong Family, Inc. provides a comprehensive menu of services. Coaching is what we would call our Cadillac service. It's the only one that we require a fee for service. And what we do with the difference between coaching and therapy is the following. Therapy presumes that there's a pathology or something wrong with the client that is seeking help, that they have something going on within themselves, whether it's anxiety or depression, concern. So that's one of the reasons why it tends to be a one-on-one, intensive, insightful process. What do I need to work on regarding myself? In the coaching model, we partner with whomever comes to the coaching service. We work with the whole family. We work with parts of the family, whoever wants to show up. And we ourselves will look at, okay, how has this diagnosis affected the family? And what do you in particular need? And then my job is to say, okay, I can offer you these strategies. Does this make sense to you? And then provide between session support. So for example, we have a 4-session package, which is good for 60 days. That's 60 days of on-call support and 4 face-to-face meetings, which is the only service I'm aware of that provides that kind of support, information, resources. I do a lot of networking. I provide referrals on an as-needed basis. I will collaborate with other community partners. I will often make referrals to those community partners. So the coaching service is our most intensive service, which is also why it's fee-for-service. We also provide free how-to seminars and webinars in the community. Anybody who wants to offer a service like a seminar can just contact us and we will set it up and schedule it and do it for free to the clients. And then the other thing we do is we have a monthly newsletter. We have a public Facebook page where people can get daily or just about daily resources, information, comments, tools. And we have a private or closed Facebook page strictly for family members to get specific resources and tools for their particular needs and as to create a community of support. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty comprehensive menu of services that we provide.
The scope of services, I'm thinking, we just talked about the walk for Alzheimer's, but
Right.
And that is certainly something that's top of mind for a lot of people and affects a lot of people. But we shouldn't think of your services in terms of just Alzheimer's or something like that. Mental diagnoses come in many different colors and stripes, right? So what's the breadth of services that you find yourself supporting?
We work with families who have loved ones who have a serious mental health diagnosis, for example, bipolar disorder. And there's a variety of spectrums that go along with that. Bipolar 1 includes mania. Bipolar 2 has serious depression. Bipolar 3 has milder symptoms, but there are still issues with mood, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, personality disorders. And then you have other neurological issues, traumatic brain injuries, families dealing with concussion, which also have concurrent depression, substance use disorders, because it's oftentimes used, individuals are dual diagnosed, meaning that they have a substance use disorder and a mental health issue. For senior citizens, probably the most prevalent mental health diagnosis is depression, grief. We'll deal with prolonged grief, not grief because there's been a recent loss, but when grief lasts what seems an especially long time and is interfering with a person's functioning, I'll get notified by other family members because they're concerned that the person has now sunk into a depression. Memory loss, because it has a huge effect on how the family has to respond. So it's creating a variety of opportunities for family members to network with other individuals who are experiencing phenomena similar to what they are experiencing. What's typical for these families is not typical for what used to be for these families. So it's basically becoming a family that's functioning next to normal. There was once a show on Broadway called Next to Normal, and it was about this, how these families function next to normal. They have to redefine what that looks like for them.
So even though the diagnoses may be very, very, very different, the way it impacts a family has a lot of similarities, it sounds like, in terms of how you can coach them to cope better with this new normal or whatever, a next to normal situation.
Similar, they are very similar. The way that the family is impacted, because families are systems. So whenever any family has a family member that is diagnosed with a chronic or life-threatening illness, the response by the family is almost always the same, whether it's a mental illness or cancer or diabetes or heart disease or Alzheimer's or whatever. But there's very little to no support for family members who have a loved one with a mental illness or a brain disorder. The focus of the support tends to still be on the individual with the diagnosis, which really doesn't help the family a whole heck of a lot, because they are now looking at things like, how do I take care of myself? Where do I fit into all of this? And what about extended family? What do we do about the holidays? How do we manage these feeling of grief that come up and overwhelm us because to a certain extent we're losing somebody we love and we're still taking care of them? There's a word for that. It's called ambiguous grief. So there's really a lot that we offer families to help them basically replant how they are functioning as a family. It's similar to taking a plant that's not thriving anymore and saying, okay, it needs to be replanted somewhere else. And it can still thrive, it just needs to be given a different set of circumstances and a different set of tools, because the tools we had before don't work anymore.
So a family, definition of a family can include anything from a partner to a sibling to a parent to a child of an aging parent, and everything in between. And whatever they want to decide, we are as a family where we need help and work collectively to help someone else, right?
Family is now defined as whomever you define as family. The old model of two parents and children and extended family doesn't apply anymore. The model now is whoever we define as our family is our family. I had a young man over the other day that I'm coaching who takes care of his grandmother who's 96 years old. He's 31. He's just committed to being available for her, making sure she eats, so he shares dinners with her. He brings it over to her. So it's interesting to see the many different ways that people engage and who chooses to engage. But it still comes down to, how do I take care of myself so that I can take care of my loved one in a healthy way?
Right.
So one of the things I suggest for family members is make sure that you attend these kinds of meetings however you can, seminars if you can't do the coaching. Get literature, read, do some breathing. Make sure that you put in 15 minutes a day, sometime during the day, put it on the calendar and commit to it like it's a doctor's appointment, to take care of yourself, to read, to meditate, to do some breathing. Make a date with a friend at least once a week. Make sure you're eating healthy. Get the junk out of the house. It's too easy to ignore how to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. But I always think of the airlines where they always say, in that first few minutes when you're sitting there, buckle your seatbelt, as if we don't know how to do that after 30 years. But they always say put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you can't help your loved ones if you're not functioning. Mm-hmm. And this is really the same process. So our company offers families those kinds of tools.
And if the family is in case A is 5 or 6 people that have decided they are the family and they're supporting someone, do you coach each one of them one-on-one, or how do you get them all to coordinate their schedules, or do you do it by conference call on the telephone? How are the ways that you get to coach?
All of the above.
All of the above.
There are times when I will do conference calling. I have the capacity to do that. Okay. There are times when I'll work with one person who is the identified coordinator of the family. They might bring their calendar, or they might take notes, or I might document the session after the session so that they have a record of what we talked about. Sometimes it's multiple people. Sometimes I'll get everybody. Sometimes I'll get one or just 2. It really will depend. That's why the service is customized. It really is, what does the family need and who do you want to have show up? Sometimes we will include the loved one with the diagnosis, but that's usually after several sessions with family members.
So your initial session typically is usually with one person who says, I need help. And then in talking to them, you can say, well, there are probably others you may want to include or could include, and then develop from there. And then the services that you offer, I assume, are not covered by insurance in this case.
They're not covered by insurance because insurance doesn't cover prevention or education. But if they're still working and they have a flexible spending plan for their health care, this service is covered. So I can give them a receipt for that.
Right.
We keep our costs low for the coaching service anyway. And we also provide a lot of free services. I do a screening call with families when they call, with any client who calls. I do a 15-minute free screening because I want to make sure that they're comfortable with the service, because it's an investment not only of their money, but of their time. Because I'll give them assignments. I expect them to do their homework. I follow up with them. And I want to make sure they understand that this isn't therapy. This is coaching. This means that you have agreed that you want to develop some skills, experiment with some new strategies, and improve the circumstances for your whole family, including your loved one.
So it's a teach people how to fish model. And
You got it.
so when you have a client, they probably aren't there forever. Like some people in therapy say, I've been in this for 20 years. And so you are able to enable and coach and develop a support team. And then it's kind of a finite piece of time and probably a finite cost. What would it, would you mind sharing with us a typical kind of cost for coaching a family of, or a team of 4 or whatever in a family?
Let's say, for example, they have a new diagnosis. They're starting to realize that the family's circumstances are going to be significantly changed. And they reach me, and they live in different parts of the state or in different parts of the country, but there's a primary caretaker here, okay? Typically, I would look at a 6 to 8 week intervention, which would cost about $500. And remembering that during this 6 to 8 week intervention, this would be a weekly conference call or consult. During that time, there is support all of that time. So if I share a strategy on Tuesday and they start experimenting with it on Wednesday and they're not sure, they can get in touch with me. If somebody else needs assistance on Thursday, they can get in touch with me. There is no additional fee for that service. That's what the service covers. So it's not just giving the skill and teaching. It's providing the hand-holding, the support, the tweaking. I don't want to give a new skill and have somebody develop a bad habit and stay with that habit and have to repair it a week later or 2 weeks later. What I would much rather do is hold their hand and walk them through it so that everybody's on the same page and feels really good about how they're moving forward with their family. So typically, I work with families 2 to 3 months, and then as needed. And
how do people find out about you?
through venues like this.
All right. So pay attention. Yeah, I hope you're paying attention to this. Very
Through
important.
venues like this, word of mouth. We're really brand new. We're only 3 years old. And we've just acquired 2 grants, which are going to enable us to do more outreach in the community. My dog and I also do pet therapy. It's another complimentary service, and we come to your house to do that. Or we go on walks with clients, and there's no age limit for that either. He's very good. He's 7. He's been doing this for 6 years. We volunteer at the Council on Aging in Bedford. We volunteer at the VA Community Care Program in Lowell, which is for veterans with PTSD and mental health issues. So, and we volunteer with families who have loved ones with mental health or memory issues. Max is really good about that, really is.
So they can reach you, and I made a note, at 781-405-8376.
That's our phone number, and they can also reach us through our website, which is growastrongfamily.org.
Growastrongfamily, one word, .org. Okay. GROWASTRONGFAMILY.
.org.
Mara, I'm curious, what happens if a family knows that things aren't going well? Maybe they have teenage kids, or an older kid that's come back to live and things aren't right, but there's no diagnosis. Do they absolutely need a diagnosis?
No. No. We work with any family of any age who notices that things are amiss, that things are a little off, that things are difficult. And again, our job is education and prevention. They do not need a diagnosis. One of the things that clinicians will often tell you, if you don't know this, is that diagnoses tend to be very fluid phenomena and can change and morph over time, especially with young people. The onset of serious mental illness is 18 to 30 years of age. So it's not surprising to hear from families, my son or daughter is getting ready for college and they're balking, they seem really resistant or depressed. Or younger, I have a 12-year-old that's completely out of control, I don't know what the issue is it our parenting? But you find out they have 4 other children that are doing just fine. It's usually not the parenting, it's usually something with their child. Hormones has an effect on behavior, for sure, as we all know. So no, we are not at all limited. I've worked with a 5-year-old child with an anxiety disorder who had selective mutism, meaning that she could only talk at home, not at school. And it was a problem because it was a safety issue at school, not to be able to communicate. So really, it's across the spectrum. She was diagnosed, but she wasn't diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, yet that's the undercurrent disorder for that.
And I'm assuming for somebody with older parents that oftentimes they have a hard time saying, gee, Mom or Dad, you need some more help, or you shouldn't be driving, and is that the kind of thing you can help with as well?
What I do is offer tools. These are some approaches you might consider, and we role play it, and they get to be their parents because they know their parents, I don't.
One thing that always is frustrating is if your child, for example, is in therapy, you can't talk to a therapist and get any information about that relationship.
Only if your child has signed a release. However, don't let that stop you, ever. If you have information you think would be useful for your loved one's services, for your loved one's provider to know, call. They're allowed to listen to what you say. They just can't talk back to you.
I see.
So certainly don't shut down the flow of communication. If you have a concern, share it. Make sure that it's available to the... What I always tell people to do, too, is if you can get their email address, follow up your voicemail with an email, because it's a paper trail.
All right. Is there, as we wrap up and segue to David when he gets here and Nancy, is there one thing that you'd like to tell everybody before we move on?
The one thing I would like to tell folks is you're not alone, and you don't have to be alone. Don't be afraid to make a phone call and ask for help. We have a full, comprehensive menu of options. It doesn't have to cost a penny to get the resources and support that you need. There's no reason to be alone.
Now, are there certain hours that you work?
Whatever. I try not to work on Friday afternoons and Saturdays, only because of family commitments that I have. But like I said, somebody calls, I will get back to them because I'm committed to making sure that people have the support they need. Families are not necessarily stable creatures.
They're definitely not. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been phenomenally fun.
Terrific resource for the whole community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something that everybody can use.
Yeah.
So we will make sure we have your name available to give to people.